All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Making Multifamily Money. So I'm very excited to bring Alex here. So Alex actually works in the healthcare profession like myself. He's a respiratory therapist. For those you don't know, I'm a pharmacist. Welcome to the show, Alex. How are you?
Steven, man, thanks for inviting me here. We finally made it happen. We've been going back and forth on it. I'm glad to be here.
No, I'm glad we can finally make something happen. I know we've been in touch a while, and I actually brought on, I think your partner Savannah onto
Oh,
one of my podcasts for one episode actually,
yeah,
and she was like super nice and
yeah,
accommodating of my crazy work schedule, top of
yeah,
what I
yeah.
do, man. But no, thanks for hopping on. And just to kind of start, can you kind of share about yourself and your real estate journey?
Yeah, for those that don't know, Alex Sabio, married father of four. I do have a W-2 job. I'm in healthcare. I've been a respiratory therapist for going on 21 years now. In a blink of an eye, I'm the old guy at work now, right? So what I can tell you is I wish my story was like the gurus say, like, they went from zero to 1,000 units in 2 years. But I think my journey is a lot more common and what a lot of other people go through is that they made mistakes along the way, right? And I started investing early to mid 2000s, was greatly affected by the 2008 recession, had some failures there, eventually started scaling my business back up, kept a lot of long-term rentals, in my portfolio. And over time, they went up in value. Over time, the tenants kind of paid off their mortgages. Over time, the mortgage rates went down, and I saw opportunities to do some cash out refinances and really found a niche in short term rentals. And I started investing exactly 3 years ago in short term rentals, and we scaled that portfolio to six short term rentals. Actually, wound up selling all my long term rentals because we went all in because we really enjoy the space. And then eventually we started a fund, and that fund purchased our first asset. So we purchased a 76 unit hotel. So, we're still growing that portfolio.
Okay, wow, you just glazed over like 50 years worth of stuff in about 2 minutes. I want to bring it kind of back. Like, so when did you graduate from respiratory therapy school? Like, when did you actually work as a respiratory
Uh,
therapist?
sure, 2002. Yeah, it
Okay,
started, yeah, 21 years ago. So.
so 2002, and then for those that don't know, like, what's kind of the typical salary range of like respiratory therapists? Just for some context.
Yeah, so we're probably 20 to 25% lower base salary than an RN, right? I work acute care here in Southern California. I could tell you my base rate. I work for Kaiser. I don't know if your viewers out there know Kaiser, but they pay very well, and they give very good benefits. So I'm in the $60 range, $60 an hour. Used to work tons of overtime, don't do any more overtime anymore, refuse. It's kind of done a 180 on that, where I used to work 6 7 days a week, and now I just work the bare minimum 3 days a week now. So
Wow, wow. Yeah, so for those who don't know, pharmacist starting salary is typically, at least back, when I graduated in 2013, was around like $60 an hour as well. But
mhm.
we come out with $250,000 of student debt, and it's a
Yeah,
doctorate level degree.
right.
But I know Kaiser, as you mentioned, they pay higher, right? Like
Yeah,
pharmacists, it's probably like if you're experienced, like 80 to 90
yes.
an hour. But was that what you made it starting off, like when you first
No,
graduated?
no, I started $19 an hour, and I thought I hit it big.
Oh, exactly.
Like,
That's why I wanted to hit that point. So, when you came out making $20 an hour, did you have any student debt, or was it just all paid for and covered for?
that's a good thing. I tell people, like, respiratory therapy is one of the biggest bangs for your buck out there. I mean, I went to community college and I had $4,000 in debt. And we paid it off within like maybe a few months of just working crazy overtime. Yeah. And my wife, who's also a respiratory therapist, she's retired now because she does the real estate stuff on the side here. But she was also a respiratory therapist.
Okay, okay. And then I guess from when you became a registered therapist, when did you start investing in real estate? Like, what was that time gap?
Yeah, almost right away, because in 2002, like, the real estate market was going up, and I was working night shift. And for those of you that work night shift acute care, there's all these infomercials that come on, right? And in the ICUs, the TVs would be on and all of my patients are intubated. And I would look up and I would hear this guy, Carlton Sheets, talking about low money, zero down real estate. And I bought his course. Back then there were CDs, listened to everything, and it resonated with me. And I can tell you that my grandparents owned a boarding care facility here in Southern California. Very Filipino thing to do. But they made a lot of money, and I remember them owning a lot of different real estate. And one thing they told me is when I purchased my primary residence, they said, you know what, we never really made good money until we invested in real estate. And for some reason that stuck with me. It's not like she was giving me mind-blowing advice or anything like that, but there are these statements every now and then that people tell you and it just sticks with you. And I knew that that was going to be my path. That just really appealed to me. So I want to say my first investment property was 2004, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Wow. So basically in about 2 years of working at 20 bucks an hour, you basically got your first single family home, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, and I would say I mean we bought our first primary home,
Okay.
and back then the market was jumping. It was going crazy, and within less than a year, the property went up $100,000 in value, and we wound up selling it and to get a brand new home. And at that time, as a RT, I'm only making about I think my base pays $40,000 or $45,000, and here I was like the home went up $100,000.
Wow.
I'm like, well, there's something to this. Like, we need to just keep like rinsing and repeating and figuring this process out.
Yeah. Can you kind of break down the numbers in your first deal? Like, how'd you save up for that down payment? Like, what was that process like? And like, kind of the numbers on your first single family home?
Well, I could tell you, like I said, I made a lot of mistakes, and the first deal I made
Yeah.
was a scam, and I lost 16 grand on that deal.
Wow.
And so what happened was I bought my home and I sold it for like $100,000 in profit. Wound up buying a brand new home, but it was weird because I said, wait, we still have at that time they were giving 80-20 loans, and I had like a home equity line of credit, and we had I think $16,000 or 30,000. I forget what the number is, and I said, you know what? I don't know why we sold our first house. We should have kept that and just kept it as a rental. Like we had this fear of buying this brand new home, and we needed to put some down payment down to make our payment lower. But we put a 5% down. But yeah, our monthly payment went down like $200 or something like that. Why not just reinvest it? So I remember we invested in something. It was a duplex in Colorado, and that wound up being a scam. The guy wound up going to prison. It was a pyramid scheme. And for some reason, right, I should have stopped dead in my tracks there. Like, you're an awful investor. I don't know what you're doing. And back then, the internet wasn't a big thing. So like the research really was just talking to another nurse who was doing the same exact thing. And I said, oh, maybe that's something I want to try. Luckily, around the same exact time, they were giving 80-20 loans. So you didn't have to put any money down. So with my first true investment was a single family home in Durham, North Carolina, 3-2, brand new construction on a lake. And I want to say it was $132,000 purchase price.
Wow. Okay. So you basically got 132K house, $0 down.
Yeah, pretty much. It was $1,000 earnest money. And I remember at closing, I got back like a $700 check. So like $300 out of pocket. What I can tell you is that property negative cash flowed. I think my mortgage was probably like $1,200, and the tenant, which I was lucky enough, it was a nurse. She stayed with me for like 15 years.
Wow.
Like, I had zero turnovers, and it took about a good 5 years or so for it to just start barely breaking even. But in my mind, Steven, it was like, hey, it would take me forever to save up this money for the down payment. At least here I'm in the game, like almost and I would negative cash flow like $100-200 a month, but I was like almost forcing saving, if that made sense. And I got to learn a business, got some nice tax breaks, and it appreciated over time. So
yeah, no, I like you shared that nugget, because basically you have a very good mindset. And what I kind of want to highlight is you think differently, right? Like most people, with the first failure, you get scammed, right? Like you could just quit right there. A lot of people can, and you can say, hey, I tried, I failed, and that's it, right? Like no regrets.
Right.
but it seems like you had something planted inside of you, early on, maybe from your grandparents. But you just said, hey, like I can buy this property. Or have you ever even been at North Carolina, Durham at that time? Or did you buy this kind of like sight unseen?
I bought it sight unseen, and it was
Yeah.
weird because at that time the internet was just starting to break out, and there was this group called Marshall Reddick Real Estate Network. They're based in Irvine, and they were trying to sell the idea that you can buy a home at around $100,000, brand new, turnkey, out of state. And at the time, the homes here, the average home in Southern California, believe it or not, was $250,000, somewhere around there, right?
Wow.
And like Carlton Sheets was saying when I listened to those CDs, he said you got to hit the 1% rule, and I'm like, well, there's no way people are renting stuff out for $2,500. That doesn't make sense to me. Looking back at it now, I should have, because the appreciation was phenomenal here, but in the Midwest and all of these other states, they were hitting the 1% rule very easy. For me, I wanted it to be brand new, so I was willing to pay a little bit more to not hit that 1% rule. Like maybe it was like 0.9% of whatever the purchase price was. So
Okay. Because yeah, I mean, like you were negative, where $200 a month, you luckily have no vacancy, but you're working, right? Like you're still
yeah,
working your W-2, so you can kind of take that hit. That's kind of what I did when I started off house hacking in California. Like good luck in California cash flowing, right?
yeah,
California is pure appreciation. My first house hack I just bought for 800,000. I lived in the master, rented out the 3 other bedrooms for 1,000 each, and
Mhm.
that just basically covered my mortgage. And I think my expense was about 1,500, including the property tax, insurance, and utilities. Yes, I had to share with 3 other tenants, but I was young at the time still, and I had that college mentality of like I'm just used to having like roommates, if that
Yeah.
made sense. And like you said, you're kind of paying yourself, right? Like you
Mm,
have to live somewhere in the Bay Area. Rents can be like $3,000 for a 1 bedroom.
yeah,
So in my mind, I was like, well, I'm paying $1,500. That's half the rent, and I'm just paying myself essentially. It's a forced
yeah,
savings. But when I left the house and I still kept it, I rented it out. Just like you, I'm negative cash flow, right? I was
yeah,
negative probably like $500 a month or something like that, not including like
right.
capex. But that property in 5 years appreciated by $500,000,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So I bought for 800 in 2017. Fast forward till today, it's worth 1.3 million.
Yeah. There's no way you work as much overtime as you can to save
Yeah.
up $500,000 in 5 years. That doesn't happen, right?
And like I said, I was negative cash flow, right? I'm negative $500 a month, which is like 6,000 a year. Times that by 5 years, that's negative 30. I mean, now at break even, I refinanced to a lower interest rate. Rents went up organically,
Mhm.
right? So
Right.
now I'm breaking even minus, capex, but like the equity, my wealth was made in the shadow, like kind of behind the scenes in that appreciation. So it's a great play to do if you don't mind a W-2, but if you want to leave a W-2, obviously you can't stack these properties when you're like negative cash flow. So
Right.
no, like I definitely agree. Like the 1% rule, usually markets that hit it, the appreciation is not going to be as good.
Right.
So it's a give and take, right? It's definitely
Right.
a give and take on
And
that end.
I think people don't see that, right, Stephen? Like people don't see all the crap that you go through as a real estate investor. Yes, people post on Instagram like, hey, my net worth is 5-10 million bucks or whatever it is. But man, you put up a lot of sacrifice.
Oh, yeah.
Sacrifice, capital, risk. That's the one thing you'll have to do. Like scared money don't make money. So you got to put your money out there to make some money. So
No, I love you said that, because when you invest in real estate, so like me, I own 90 units, right? And a lot of people from the outside think like, oh, wow, this guy should be like so rich, retired. And yes, assuming they're stabilized, right?
yeah.
But in the process of stabilizing it, you're putting a lot of money into the properties. Any excess cash flow, you're pumping back for renovations. I'm putting my own
Mhm.
money into renovations. So I'm the little definition of like asset rich, cash poor right now,
Yes.
right? Until
Yes.
I unload one of my properties. And at that point, I'll get a lump sum of my money. So I think people don't realize it. I mean, it's kind of glorified on social media and YouTube, as you know, like people
Mhm.
flex a lot. But as someone who operates on many, I know like the behind the scenes, like it's not as glamorous as
No.
it seems. No one talks about the failures. I'm a little bit reverse. I talk about like everything I failed at,
Yes. Me too.
uh, just for me to remember and want people to learn as well. So, yeah, anyways, I kind of digressed there a bit, but I guess after that first single family home, when did you get your next one?
Like a few months later or something like that. For some reason, I didn't learn my lesson to where I was negative cash flowing. Wound up buying another one in Houston, Texas, with the same company. I remember visiting this place in Pasadena, and there was a realtor that spoke highly about investing in Texas, why Texas is such a great market, and why Houston is. And at the end of it, he said, "Hey, I have a list of homes for sale." And this line of people just went there. And it was crazy because people were just picking them out, and we're like, "Oh my God, we're not going to get a home." But back then, like I said, you didn't put any money down. At this one, we actually did buy for like, I want to say $120,000, but we actually did put 5% down on this one. We're like, okay, I think we'd like a little bit lower payment. So we put, I don't know, 5,000-6,000 bucks down or something like that. That one negative cash flowed as well for a while. And it was kind of like the same thing. It took like 5 years or so for it to like start breaking even. Interest rates went down, wound up refinancing, stuff like that. But yeah, it's we kind of kept going through that process, and it kind of led me to one of my biggest failures, which was here in Southern California near a hospital I was working at. I was, remind you, I was buying all these properties that were like or $100,000 around that range. I wound up buying a property here in Southern California for $450,000 in 2008. And it seemed like the second I signed the papers, the government was watching me, and they said, "Let's crash this market."
Yeah.
and that's exactly what happened. I bought at the height of the market, and that was a tough thing to recover from. So there's another failure, right? But for some reason, I kept going. I don't know what it was.
Let's backtrack. Tell me about that property you bought near the hospital. Like, what was kind of the down payment? What was kind of your rents?
Yeah.
And yeah,
So the thing is, that property was brand new. So you're starting to see a trend. Like
yeah,
early on in my investing career, I didn't want to do the work, right? And so I liked stuff that was a little bit more turnkey, and I was okay with a little bit less cash flow. And so at the time, I said, you know what? This property isn't a gold mine, because I work at this large teaching hospital. I could always rent this thing out. And the funny thing is, if I kept this property, I would have made a killing. But
oh
in
yeah,
the end, it was like, oh, I just couldn't do it anymore. But anyway, I bought it for mid 400s. Don't remember the purchase price. At the time, I put zero down because they
wow,
were doing 80-20 loans. They weren't, you didn't need to put any money down. And at the time, I said, I think I could rent this out for about $2,200 a month. But in the end, my mortgage was like 3,200 bucks. And I'm like,
okay.
oh shoot, it was a negative $1,000. But I had already been negative cash flowing on a lot of these properties. And
Yeah,
I was like, I kind of did the calculation. Okay, I'll be negative $1,000, but I think in the next 2-3 years, it's going to be worth this much. But in the end, I bought it for, let's say, 450, whatever the purchase price was. Like 2-3 years later, it was worth $230,000. Right.
wow,
And that's when the market just completely crashed. It just kept going down, and I couldn't offload the property anymore. This was my first like real clue into real estate, because I tried to self-manage this as a long-term rental and made almost every mistake in the book. I think I was renting it out for $2,000 a month. And that's if they paid on time, or if they paid at all. And so at a certain point, you're negative, like over 12, 13, $1,400. You run out of time, money, and energy. So that's kind of at one point I walked away from it.
yeah. No, so at the time you bought it, were your other two rentals that you bought, were they just breaking even at that point, or were they still negative as well?
At that point, I think they were starting to maybe cash flow a little bit. If
Okay.
anything, maybe $50 or something like that, right?
So at that
But
point, the lenders could be like, okay, at least these two are like kind of breaking even. This one you're buying, you're going to be negative, but you're working a W-2. So that's probably their rationale.
to be honest with you, Steven, I don't even think they looked. I mean, back then they were giving loans out to anyone that signed on the dotted line,
Yeah.
which is what kind of got us into the mess that we're in now, or like back then. So yeah, it was. I think I used the builder's like lender at that time, and
Wow.
one of the big things was like, oh, they were giving like a $10,000 credit or something like that. And I said, oh, okay, let me do it. And then I saw a few people buying in the neighborhood. And I said, oh, I really like the neighborhood, good school district and everything. But, it just didn't work out. And that's the thing. Sometimes things don't work out. I think people try to find the home run deal right off the bat. Sometimes when you first learn to swing a bat, you're probably going to strike out or maybe foul tip a ball. Hopefully you get a base hit. Might be miraculous where you get a home run, but I rarely see it. So for me, it's a numbers game. And then you're going to start learning from your mistakes. In the end, I'm glad all of that happened because I would have never got to the point where I'm at today. Like, imagine if those properties did cash flow back then, I'd still have those properties and I would have never pivoted into short-term rentals like I do now. So.
No, I'm glad you shared that because basically, I kind of give this analogy. If you fall one time from a 30-foot cliff, you're dead, right? You cannot continue.
Yeah.
But if you fall 30 times 1 foot, you can get back up, right?
Yeah.
So if you kind of know that, basically, what's your worst case scenario and then what's your upside, right? So like for me, I'm constantly doing that assessment, at least now. Like, okay, worst case scenario, if this property fails, like how much am I going to lose? If I lose, let's say 200,000, how much is that going to set me back? Right. Okay. Worst case, that's maybe a year and a half of work. On top of that, and it's like a hard life lesson, MBA.
Right. And I think people don't do it the other way too, right? People are so scared to take that risk, but there's huge upside here, but you're looking at I might, be out of pocket $100 a month. But yeah, dude, you could possibly have this huge upside. And I don't know that when you mention like risk and reward, I always think that we don't do it right here in this country. I don't know what it is. Like we're opposite in a lot of ways. So.
No, because like basically you can assess your worst case scenario, but look at your upside too, right? So like for example, my single family home, my worst case, I'm negative $500 a month, right? If you're making 6 figures plus, you better be able to take that hit. Right. Yeah. But then the upside was I made $500,000 in equity.
Right.
Huge. Like, it's crazy. Right. And then when I jumped into apartments, I thought the same thing. I was like, okay, I bought this 26 unit for $500,000. It literally appraised at $750K day one. I made $250K equity day one. And guess how much money I'm putting into my renovation? About $250K. So worst case, if I put in $250K and renovate this and raise the rents or keep the rents the same, I broke even if I sold this. Mm-hmm. Right. So my worst case scenario is I broke even and I wasted all this time renovating these units.
Right.
But I learned.
Which isn't bad. You learned and you got experience. Yeah. You got experience and the lenders will lend to you now because you have experience. If you go to something else.
That's your worst case scenario, right? Best case scenario, it's worth 1.5 million when I triple the value.
Nice.
Right. So, you have to think of things that way. Right. So, once I kind of pivoted my mindset to that, it definitely got me thinking differently. But then I will admit I was the type where I had like rosy colored glasses on. I started investing in 2017, right? And this is probably my first time, 2023, like I'm getting hit a little bit, like I'll be honest, had a hard money loan called due, 12-month term, and that cash out refinance took me 90 days. It took me 90 days to do a cash out refinance. Every single property I bought took 45 days.
Right.
So just getting hit with like constant everything, right? My ARV went down big time because cap rates increased. That hit me. Right. Interest rates skyrocketed. I got 7.5, which is considered good today, right? Right. Back when I was buying properties at 4. So like all these factors, and then insurance went up. So like everything is just hitting my NOI. My NOI is down. My cap rate is going up. So the value decompressed significantly. So I did a BRRRR. I only put out 80K. I left 120K in the deal, right? Like doesn't sound that terrible in this grand scheme of things, but when I underwrote it, I thought it was gonna be a perfect BRRRR where I put out all 200K, right? But then if you think long term, like okay, whatever, in 3 years the interest rates drop down, just do another cash out refinance later, pull that money out later. So it went from a home run to a little base hit, but given the situation and the circumstance, like you just have to stay in the game and survive as long as possible. And if you can make it out during this difficult time, that's how you get ahead, right? During the next bull run. So, I'm really glad you mentioned that. And like for you, like I would say your path, like, you were basically getting hit left and right,
Yeah.
Basically your first deals were negative cash flow.
Awful. Yeah.
You knew that, hey, I want less work. I'm working full time. Less work means negative cash flow, not as great return, right? If you're
Right.
willing to put in sweat equity and more time, then you can may make more money, right? So it's
Yeah.
always like a give and take that you constantly need to balance. But you had a model that you followed, and despite getting hit by it, you still kind of trucked on it and moved forward, and didn't get discouraged by that. So
Yeah.
I guess from 2008, I guess how'd you pivot from there? Like, what was kind of your strategy after walking away from that property?
Well, I actually had a foreclosure and a bankruptcy.
Mhm.
And it's funny because the banks, I foreclosed on one property and filed bankruptcy to protect myself. And then I had all of these other long-term rentals. And it's funny because the banks didn't want them. They're like, we are not taking those properties. And at the time I looked at them, I said, well, they're breaking even, I
Yeah.
might as well keep them, and so I held on to them. But it was crazy because I had all of this knowledge, and I didn't want to let that go to waste, right? And the one thing I'll tell the viewers and the listeners out there is that real estate is extremely forgiving. Like, you could be someone like me who got scammed out of their first deal and like had a foreclosure bankruptcy. If you stay in the game long enough, like, the numbers are on your side, that real estate's going to appreciate, rents are going to go up tremendously over time, and your tenants or your guests are going to pay down your mortgage note, which is really what happened with me. And so I think 2018 hit, and I'm like, okay, I think I could get back in the game. And I had all these like negative mindsets where, hey, you filed for bankruptcy, you can't reinvest into anything until 7-8 years, whatever my mindset was at the time, which was bogus. I saw people like reinvesting earlier, and so 2018 hit, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to start buying more properties again. But I learned my lesson. The lesson learned is I need to focus heavily on cash flow and not really rely on appreciation. And so I started buying in the Midwest, where it wasn't as turnkey, but my cash flow was much more. And so I started buying in Cleveland, Ohio, where your purchase price is like 60 to 80,000 bucks. And those properties were cash flowing me like 300, 400, 500 bucks. Huntsville, Alabama was an amazing city. I love that city. And I was cash flowing there. So now all of a sudden I got some wind behind me. I'm starting to cash flow, like, I think maybe a couple $1,000. But at that time, I'm starting to become the old guy at work now. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm probably going to be here another 15 years, right? And that can't be. And so I'm like, well, what do I have to do? I have to either scale my portfolio or increase cash flow somehow. Tried to get into multifamily in 2020, early 2020, and it just didn't happen because COVID hit. And like, there are all of these factors where, like, any appointment I had with brokers, none of them wanted to speak to you. And when you're brand new in multifamily, like, they send you the crappiest deals out there.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to give you the good deals. And we were analyzing all these deals that were negative cash flowing. And I said, I'm not going to be in that position again. And at the time, I was working tons of overtime in the hospital, and I was getting killed in taxes. And I hired a CPA at the time, Amanda Hahn. So she writes books for Bigger Pockets.
Oh.
And so she was like, you know what, you should really look into short-term rentals, because we can probably give you a nice tax break. And a lot of my investors who do short-term rentals, they make a little bit more cash flow. And so eventually 2020, 3 years ago, I buy my first short-term rental and absolutely loved it. That really appealed to me. The cash flow appealed to me, the tax breaks. And to be honest with you, we really do enjoy giving a guest a good experience. So, eventually we wound up selling a lot of those long-term rentals to buy more short-term rentals.
Wow. Okay. No, that's a crazy. So there's about a 10-year gap, right? From pretty much when you bought your first property and then when you start buying short-term rental. And,
Right.
What I really loved about you said was because you learned. So see, what's smart about you is you didn't get burned twice, right? Like, you
Right.
basically got burnt in 2008. And a lot of people did, right? Not just you. I know a
Mhm.
lot of people, they just got wiped out. Like you said, they were giving loans to people of zero down who had no business
Yeah.
getting properties, and they didn't really do income verification.
Yep.
So it was bound to happen, unfortunately. But yeah, a lot of people got wiped out and their properties underwater. They just walked away, right?
Yeah.
And basically, your credit score probably got hit pretty hard.
Yep.
Filing from bankruptcy and foreclosure. It was funny when you said that they didn't even want your other properties. They're like, nah, like you just can keep it. Like we don't even want it. That's
Right.
crazy to me. Like don't even take it. They're like, we don't want to deal with the headache.
Right.
Just keep it. And you're just like, well, they're breaking even. So okay, as long as they're
Yeah.
breaking even, or here and there you might put some money in, but you're still working. So that's funny. And one thing that you mentioned as well was, when you bought short-term rentals is basically, you and your wife are W-2, right? You're actively working full time. And if you do short-term rentals, you're materially participating. So basically
Yes.
whatever can offset your active income from
Yes.
there, right? Like for me, I'm single, I work W-2. So, I do a lot of multifamily, which is a lot, more passive income. I'm not materially participating in it.
Right.
So I feel like I am, but not for the tax purposes.
Right.
But like I can't offset my income as a W-2, right?
Yes.
So it just kind of carries forward for me. So I always joke, just get married for tax purposes, right?
Yes.
But no, that's smart that you did that. And because short-term rental, you get the tax benefit today, right? So you write
Yes.
off your income today, whatever 120K salary you write off today. And you have the potential to cash flow more, right?
Yes.
With short-term rentals. So cash flow is like playing defense, right?
Yes.
So
we felt like we had this crazy hack and it didn't feel like it was real. Like our first short-term rental was cash flowing $5,000 a month. We did that for a good 2 years straight.
wow.
Right, on average. And not only that, it gave us such big tax breaks that the first year we got a $41,000 tax refund. Now, mind you, the first year in Respiratory, that's probably what my salary was.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of American salary was. And here I was getting that whole, everything I paid into federal income taxes got every single dollar back. And so what I did, I bought more short-term rentals with it.
Because now you can save more money, right? You're getting basically money back that was yours.
Yes, and then so it's this weird hamster wheel where you're in. You have to buy more properties because you're getting more income, and then you get more tax breaks. And then like right now, I might be screwed because I'm not going to buy another property this year because the deals don't make sense. But it's either, hey, you're going to pay X amount of dollars in taxes. So you have to make this decision like, do I want to get properties right now, even though the margins are really tight? But the thing is, if you don't do it, you're going to pay taxes. And so I've gotten to the point where I hate paying taxes now. And so I might just buy the property, so we'll see. The numbers have to work out. So
yeah. See, what I like about it is you look at real estate a bit differently, right? So obviously, like for some people, like a lot of people buy multifamily, they do it because of the tax benefits, right? You get that bonus depreciation up front. It's huge because multifamily, like speaking from experience, it takes at least 3 years if you're doing value add real estate, like renovating a lot of units in the apartment and turning over your tenant base. It takes probably about 2 to 3 years, depending how fast you go, before you start actually cash flowing, right? Like you have to renovate it, bring a new tenant in, stabilize it, and then once you do your cash out refinance, your cash flow drops down again, and then you have to wait from there to gradually raise the rents, and over time you'll get the higher rents. So what I say in multifamily is initially you get the tax benefit. That's where you get your savings, right? You're not going to be saving money otherwise. But then if you own it for like 5-10 years, at that point, that's when it's kind of that like crazy compounding cash flow. Right. So you kind of, or a lot of people, yourself included, are doing that with short-term rentals, right? Where for context, $5,000 a month, I mean, that's equivalent to like almost a 25 to 50 unit apartment complex once stabilized.
Right.
Yeah. So that's just crazy context, right? Like that's what I'm kind of striving for with my multifamily. But with multifamily though, the only difference I would say is you can, as you increase the rents, increase NOI, increase the value as well. So by the time I'm making, $5,000 a month in cash flow, I probably would have pulled out like everything plus some, right? Yeah. So, but it takes longer to do that versus short-term rentals. It's kind of a little more faster than probably 3 years, or probably a year or two. So, you basically had benefit day one as you're setting up your STR, but then as it built up, that's when the cash flow came in. And 5K is a lot. Like take home, like after
Yeah.
tax. That's basically pharmacy. That's probably more. That's probably, yeah, it's about probably your salary right there, or one of your guys' salary. So at
Yeah.
that point, it's just kind of like, wow, this is crazy. And, you know, like you don't have to pay anything for this. It's just you just doing it and taking consistent
Right.
action.
Yeah, that's how my wife was able to retire right away. She retired in 3 months after doing it. There's some politics there with, like, you know, with work, and then my CPA saying, hey, you know what, if you stay at home, we could try to claim real estate professional, even though we didn't need to at the time. And then not only that, there was COVID that hit. And we have 4 kids, and they were all being homeschooled, and we didn't know what the hell they were doing, if we were both at work. So there's a lot to it. But yeah, with short-term rentals, we make the money up front. But the problem is, like with multifamily, you have such a bigger, like, when you sell, your value is going to be so much more versus me. My 4-bedroom, 3-bath home it's going to sell whatever the comparable value is next door. I can't really add that much more value, but you get the benefit right up front with the tax breaks and the cash flow. So.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that, because like you said, with single family homes, they don't care if you're getting like 10K a month in rent or like 1K. It just sells what the neighbor sells for, right?
Yes.
But in multifamily, if you're getting 10X the income, it's 10X the value.
Yes.
Right. So
much.
basically you have to think long term. And, for me, I kind of fell into that whole FOMO trap. Like, that's why I bought my mobile home park. I'll be honest, like a lot of people ask me why. I just said it was shiny object syndrome. But, what seems like you kind of did, which I thought was smart, was like, yeah, once you kind of figure you like STR, and STR takes a certain personality, right? You have to be very hospitable.
Very much.
It's customer service oriented.
Yes.
A lot of what you do as a respiratory therapist probably translated over to that. You're interfacing of nurses, pharmacy, doctors, intubating patients, talking to patients, right? So I think it was a very translatable skill. For me, I'm a pharmacy director at a hospital, so I'm used to like operations and systems and people management. So that's very translatable to managing a real estate portfolio as well, right? And managing people and property managers and contractors and all that stuff. But yeah, it takes a certain type of personality. So you kind of have to know what you like, but once you know what you like, kind of my thing that I learned is just commit to it for a long time, right?
Yeah.
Like if I could have just not bought the mobile home park and put that to buy another apartment complex, and my life would be a lot simpler and easier and probably making more money, right?
Yeah.
Just because it's economies of scale.
Yeah.
And it's like your mind's not spread between multiple places, because I'm putting most of my time and energy into my mobile home park because it requires the most time and energy. I'll be honest.
Right.
But if I were to put that same effort into my apartment complexes, I'd probably be making a lot more money. So that was my failure. But in the grand scheme of things, like, I guess in comparison to what you went through, it's not even that bad of a failure, right?
Yeah.
In the process of my mobile home park, and, I'll probably make a little bit of money, or even may break even. But to me, I'm like, even if I lost money, I'll just be like, you know what? I tried it. I learned.
Yes.
And worst case, I know how to invest with a mobile home park syndicator because I owned one myself. They can't they can't bullshit me, for lack of a better word. Right. And if I break even, it's just like, okay, well, I owned it and I've learned for free how to vet it and basically know that it's not for me right now.
Yeah.
But
you swung the bat,
Yeah.
That's the thing. You swung the bat, you went up there and you give it a chance. I think a lot of people don't take that chance. And for me, it was going up there, swinging the bat. This city worked, this city didn't work, this city didn't work. Oh, wait, I found something that I really like, and I'm starting to hit base hits, doubles, home runs. Like, maybe let me stay in this lane. Because a lot of these, like, people always ask me, what should I do? Should I wholesale, flip, multifamily, short-term rental, midterm rental? All of them work. All of them, they all work, but you have to figure out that lane. And once you work on it, just be the expert in that, and you'll be okay. So.
No, I'm glad you said that, because like you said, just pick anything, right? You can literally just buy single families in California and become wealthy over 40 years. You can literally just buy multifamily in Oklahoma like me and be wealthy doing that. You just can only buy mobile home parks. The key is just doing it consistently for a long period of time. And that's how you win. So just pick one, whatever lane that is, and then do it for a long time, and you can't lose. Like, it'd be very rare for you to lose, right? That's all you meant earlier by saying real estate's forgiving.
Yes.
Right. So, like, to me, it's just so crazy, like, just how much opportunity there is. And, with, like you were mentioning back then, like, you had no information. Like, you're literally watching infomercials on old TV, right?
Yeah.
And now, like, you can literally turn on your phone and like
Hmm.
get access to all the information in the world, which it's good and bad, right? Good in the sense of like it's out there, bad in the sense you might have shiny object syndrome,
Yeah. Yeah.
and have FOMO, like, oh, this failed, I want to jump to here. This failed, I want to jump here. But in reality, if you just stick to that one thing and just kept on moving past that failure and not find that quick fix, you would have gotten through it,
Right.
right?
Yep.
For
Yep.
you, it took probably you about 16 years, right? 2002 all the way to
Yes.
2018 before you even found what you want. That's 16 years.
Yes. Right.
Most people are not willing to put in 16 months to do
Right.
one thing, right?
Right. Right. Right.
So that's the persistence and the grit and the tenacity, which is what led you to what it is today. And relatively speaking, you're still young. You call yourself the old guy, but it's relatively speaking, relatively young, right? Compared to like
Yes.
people we treat in the hospital, where they
Right.
call us like young whippersnappers in
Yeah.
comparison. So no,
In my in my early 40s, could walk away from my W-2 job today if AI took over respiratory therapy. I'm cool with it. That's cool. I had a great run. I'm not out there. I've created that side hustle that's replaced my main hustle. Actually, more than twofold. So I'm okay with it.
see, so and what I like about too is like you're humble enough to like, even though you're making double, so you basically replace your income and your wife's income, like
Yeah.
with your short-term rental portfolio, but despite that, you're still working full time, right? Like
I like
for
it.
me,
Yeah.
yeah,
I still
like
like it.
yeah, like that's what I say to people, like for me, I bought 80 units in 8 months when I got laid off during COVID. That was ironic.
Oh.
I got laid off during COVID, 2020, like March of 2021. Literally,
Yeah.
my hospital I was at in Orange County like laid me off.
You need to get laid off again, man. I mean, dang, get you.
Yeah, and then literally at that point, like I had such a disdain for like pharmacy or just a W-2 because like I poured myself into like I
Yeah.
became like I finished pharmacy school in 5 years. I became a director within 4 years of graduating. I've like got additional master's, any certification you can think of. I basically poured myself into. I'm like, I poured all myself into this, and all it led me was getting laid off during COVID. During COVID, when you think that they were calling us heroes, like I was literally getting unemployment checks when people were being called heroes. So I bought 80 units in 8 months, but so I scaled rapidly. But kind of fast forward to today, it's kind of ironic. Like I actually I used to use real estate to escape from my W-2. Now I use my W-2 to escape from real estate.
Yeah.
Because real estate is like 24/7.
Yeah.
Right. Especially if I'm renovating, like I renovated 40 units in 1 year. Right.
Oh, wow.
Like just this past year between my mobile park and 2 apartment complexes, I renovated 40 units. So now I'm just like, oh my God, like I'm constantly on, right? W-2, you clock in, clock out.
Yeah.
And if you clock in and let's say you only take care of one patient and you leave, you get paid for the full shift, 8, 10 hour, 12, whatever shift, right? You can be working graveyard, everyone's asleep, knocked out, stable, you get paid the same, right?
Right.
So that's what people don't understand is like, don't take your W-2 for granted. Like literally how much, regardless of how much you perform, you get paid. In real estate or business, you're paid based on your performance. So, like if I make a mistake, it's costing me money. Like I pay for it versus if I make a mistake at work, it just costs my work money.
Right. The one thing with short-term rentals, I'll say that there's lots of systems in place now. And I say you could do the work part-time, but I'm gonna let you know it's all the time. Right? Like it doesn't require that much time and effort to do our short-term rental business remotely. But the thing is, you can't clock out. You're not clocking out, dude. You know what I mean? You're on the clock 24 hours. I could get a leak right now and I'm gonna have to solve that problem. Right. And so part-time all the time. And people don't see that.
Yeah, I think like on social media they kind of say, oh, I make like whatever 10K a month in passive income, but it's not really passive, right? Like maybe you have your systems in place as you mentioned, and you know what to do. There's a leak, okay, I text the plumber, or text me a photo of whatever the leak is, turn off the water, and here's my plumber, reach out to them, and the plumber will tell you how much it is, right? So that's literally what it is, but you have to constantly be on and have to be able to problem solve and just get hit with like curveballs like left and right. So that's the difference. And for some people, they don't like that. Like real estate's not for everybody, right? Like that's what I kind of learned when I started scaling real estate and drank the Kool-Aid. I was shoving real estate down everyone's throat. But then as I kind of owned it more, I just realized that it's not for everybody, right? Like you have to be you know, like me and you, willing to always learn, willing to basically fall, get back up, and willing to take bats, swings,
Yeah.
even though you'll miss, right? But some people, if you can't handle that, then by all means, like, don't do it. And if you're not willing to learn, then don't do it, right?
Yeah.
That's why I tell people, like, you know, with multifamily, like, okay, if you're like too cheap to like pay for like a coaching session or even like mentorship, like you have no business trying to buy an apartment complex, because literally, you know, like you can pay like $2,000-3,000 for like a course mentorship, but I make mistakes daily that could cost me like 6 to 10K.
Yeah.
Easily.
Or a consultation for, I see, like I charge
Yeah.
$150 for a consultation. People won't want to pay it. It's like $100, dude. Really? Like, you don't want to pay $100 to an hour's worth time of an expert that you could learn a ton from. So
Yeah, like people don't see that, right? Like, okay, if even if you paid someone $150 and whatever, if you learn one or two nuggets that saved you money down the road or expedited your journey, like why not? Right.
right.
Like that's what I'm saying. It's like I didn't shop around insurance one year, and that cost me like $3,000. Because if I shopped around like, you know, like I should have, and like I teach, like I just didn't do it because I was just so busy doing multiple things, right? Like
Right.
and just that alone, like what could $3,000 done for me, right? Or done for people. So I think people like they're pinching pennies but dropping dollars. But
Yes.
you know, to kind of circle back, because you know, obviously I love talking about mindset so much. Kind of show me like what's kind of your short-term rental portfolio today, and I guess what type of cash flow are you kind of averaging, I guess, since you started doing it?
So I own 5 outright by myself, and I partnered one with my brother, and we're 50-50 on that. Short-term rental will be up and down, and there's like there was an article recently where someone said that short-term rentals are down like 47% in the city I'm in. What I could tell you, there's some truth to it where it is down, especially like the older rentals that aren't standing out, but it's probably down 20% from its all-time highs. But what I tell people is like, if all-time highs, that's like if Kobe was averaging 35 and then now he's averaging 27. I mean, you guys are calling him a bum now. I mean, it's still a very good profitable thing. Like we had an $80,000 month between 5 rentals in July.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. And June was the same thing. And that's not including my brother's. My brother's was generating about $20,000 a month. So those are $100,000 months, right? So even if you're not cash flowing at all throughout the year and just take advantage of the summer, yeah, you got a lot of cash flow. But what I would say is I'm close to $20,000 a month. We'll see how this year ends. And really that's close to my financial freedom number. I keep pushing it back. I remember when I bought the Carlton Sheets course, I said, $3,000 a month. I am freaking out of here, man. And I thought, oh, $3,000 isn't that much. And then it wound up being 5,000 and then 10,000. And now it's 20,000. But then now it's like, well, if I walk away from my job, I would have to replace like, you know, a good $7,000-8,000 a month in salary. And I have to pay about $2,000 a month for medical benefits. Do I really want to walk away from $9,000 from a job that's down the street from me, something I'm very good at now because I'm one of the top RTs in the region? And to be honest with you, it's fairly easy for me now. I don't know. The question is whether it's taking away time from me making more money in real estate. And if it's taking away from a passion where I enjoy helping others learn about real estate, maybe that's the time to walk away. So,
no, I'm glad you mentioned that, because, like, you know, for some reason my goal was like 20K a month by like 35, right? And you know, obviously, once my real estate is stabilized, maybe I'll get halfway there. But you know, what was kind of humbling for me was like people who are doing short-term renters, they hit the goal a lot faster. Like I literally, kind of started a mastermind group with this one guy, and he went the short-term rental route in like Napa, up north in the wine area. And you know, I went the multifamily route, but it was just kind of crazy because he hit like 30K a month, you know, at one point. And then I'm over here like, oh geez, like I'm just pumping all my money in renovation. So it's a little bit long-term game. But yeah, it definitely gave me some FOMO there. But as I kind of thought about it, you know, I guess more recently, because I paused, right? When you're buying real estate, you don't have time to reflect. Like at the rate I was buying at, I bought 80 units in 8 months, and literally I I had 2 more under contract that I just walked away from out of due diligence. I had an RV park under contract and then a 50 unit. So I potentially could have bought like 100, almost 200 units in a year by myself.
Wow, that's impressive. Yeah.
Right. But I'm glad I didn't, because I would probably be bankrupt right now and like probably have no hair. Right. And have it all gray. But, you know, when you're buying, you're just constantly buying. And you're just like on this like treadmill. Right. And then when I kind of paused for the past year, because I realized that, you know what, I hit my mental capacity. Like buying anymore does not make sense. Like I'm starting to forget things. I'm not managing things as well as I should be. That's when I knew that this is my max. I don't want to go beyond this. It'd be irresponsible to go beyond this. And
you
then
bought another job. Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said earlier, I'm using my W-2, which is easy, to escape from my real estate, because now real estate became a lot more stressful, and it's 24/7, and it costs me money. Any mistake, I'm paying. Right? If I make a mistake in my hospital, okay, I still get paid. Right? Doesn't cost me anything. So it just was kind of interesting to me where, you know, I said 20K a month, and then I think for me, the trap that people get into is like, you know, once you hit 20K, you move the goalposts to 30K, 40K,
all the
50K,
time.
60K. But, you know, I read a book recently called Die of Zero. You might have read it or heard of it. But basically, it kind of states that, like, you know, like up to a certain point, like, is it worth it? Right? Because around 45 is when you kind of hit your peak earning potential. Right. And then there's some experiences that you have at like in your 20s, 30s, and 40s that you can't get back. Right. So if you're constantly working, you're losing out on you're losing out on compounding experiences.
Yes.
Right. So totally to me, that hit me kind of hard, because I'm just like, all right, well, whatever. Like, you know, people talk about legacy and, you know, passing on stuff. And it's certainly nice to say. But as I kind of analyze it a bit more, I thought it was a little bit more an ego thing. Like, honestly, in 3 generations, no one's going to remember you. Like, people die. Like, me, these people die every day, right? Like, literally in our hospital. Probably you more than me. But we see people die, and literally in 3 generations, no one will remember you, right? Even if you pass on a bunch of money and a bunch of real estate. But what's remembered is like the knowledge and the concepts and the value that you pass on to people. So that kind of got me like thinking so much for like, you know what? I don't care to be as rich as I thought I wanted to be. And like, honestly, if I stopped today, like, and let that compound, that's probably enough to hit my goal, like whatever that is. Right. So I definitely pause and reflect a little bit to think about that. And, you know, like, and with our profession, it's okay. Like you can honestly stop for like 5 years and come back if you want to.
Yes.
Right. Like, it's not like we're undesirable. Right.
or teach, you know, if you wanted to go that route. Yeah. So, or clinical instructor, whatever.
Exactly. So it's just kind of like a lot of options there. So just something that I reflected on recently, just want to share with you to consider. Because there's different like seasons of your life where, you know, you mentioned you had 4 kids, right? Your kids are only at a certain age in one time of their life. And eventually as they get older, you don't, that time, it's kind of scary. I read this like video, it's depressing. You spend the most amount of time with your parents, like when you're 1 to 18. But after 18, when they move out, that's when the time dwindles, right? Where you see them. Like, I see my dad like 2 times a year. And if your dad, let's say, lives in there 20 more years, I'm gonna see him 40 more times. And if you think about it that way, it's kind of like morbid in a way, but it makes you kind of cherish that one interaction you have. It's like, oh wait, this is the one time I'm gonna see them again out of 40. When you kind of put like a finite number on it, it's kind of like interesting and puts things into perspective. So that's how I kind of think about things recently. And reflecting on that quite a bit.
Got to go meet my kids. See, my oldest kid is 20 now. And so
so you're seeing it, right? Unless they went to college locally, but like, you know, like for me, I moved. My parents are in Northern California. I'm in Southern California. It's not as easy to see them, right? And then, you know, right now I don't have kids, so there's only certain things that I can do before I have a kid. And then when I have a kid, there's certain things that I can only experience once you kind of have them. So that's some perspective that I was kind of hit with recently from one of my mastermind students. Actually taught me that. And it just kind of like hit me a little bit like, wow, like, you know, why was I chasing so much wealth? Like, I just felt like I was on a hamster wheel chasing something that was kind of arbitrary a little bit. People say 20K because it just sounds kind of cool, right? Like, you know, like that's like 2 pharmacist salaries in a way. But, you have to really kind of sit back and reflect occasionally to realize, is it actually what you want to do?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely like we could call it a day, and sometimes I wonder like should I complicate things even more? Because I could have purchased maybe one or two more short-term rentals and then
Yeah.
just be like, because we got our system dialed in, and definitely we did feel that way when we purchased our hotel. It was very stressful. Still stressful, but not as much, like when we were closing on it initially, but sometimes you wonder like is the money really worth it, or you just want to call it a day? But I think when I looked at it, I said, you know what, life's too short. Why not just go
Yeah.
for it? Let's just see this thing through. I've helped so many people in short-term rentals or real estate in general, that it was like, well, okay, I gotta see this through. It's almost like a wasted talent, and you don't want that to go by. So but we'll see where it
No,
goes from here.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because like that's what I was thinking too. Like where like yeah, honestly you just could have took that time and energy and scaled your short term rental, which it's on autopilot at this point, right? Like
Yeah.
80% of it is you know what to do. Same with me in
Right.
multifamily. 80% of it's copy and paste.
Right.
But it's always nice to deviate and have no regrets. But yeah, if it doesn't work out, you're like, you know what, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. Then like okay, I'm not going to deviate, and it'll just more solidify what you're currently doing. So sometimes it
Right.
kind of takes a little deviation to come to that realization, right? And
Right.
like you
Right.
said, we're realizing this young, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
So it's humbling. So yeah, let's actually dive into a little bit about that. What got you into the hotel? Like what made you kind of make that pivot?
So before short-term rentals, I was trying to get into multifamily, and I was sold on the commercial asset aspect of it. Me and my good friend, actually Tony Robinson, we were trying to get into multifamily together, and it just wasn't happening. So then we kind of both pivoted into short-term rentals. There was a third guy. His name's Omid, really cool guy. He scaled his portfolio into short-term rentals also. But with me, there was always this desire or something pulling me into the commercial aspect. So I was like, well, do I want to get into apartments, or do I just do, maybe convert some apartments into short-term rentals or midterms, or why not just get into a hotel? So then you just start networking your butt off. And that's one advice I'd always give to people is just go out there and make friends. They call it networking now, but just go out there and make friends. And you really never know where you're gonna, where that's gonna lead to. And so I was never really had an agenda when I was out there networking, and so I just started meeting so many people, and there was always a lot of people saying, "Hey, you're doing really big things. If you ever want to put something together, let's figure something out." So that's really kind of how it happened. I met a couple of people who had been investing in hotels, who already had some hotel experience, and I said, "Well, if you ever want to do something together, let's try to do something." So that's really how it came about. Really, all of this, Stephen, if you told me I'd own properties in Arkansas, in Tennessee, in Alabama, any of these states, I bet you I couldn't even point to Arkansas right now on a map, but we have property there, and the numbers worked out. Did my research and all that, but just as long as just keep an open mind. And we live here in Southern California, and when I tell people about Arkansas, they kind of like, they thumb their nose and like, whatever. But I'm like, okay, whatever. It makes good money here for me. But I just wanted to scale and do something special, and I just wanted to see something through, and that's what I'm doing right now. I'm glad I did it.
Okay, good. And then for that deal, like, are you partnering with people? Did you just like raise money, or how's kind of the deal structure work for that hotel?
So we do have 4 members in our. We started a fund, and so that fund raises money from accredited investors, and they invest $50,000, $100,000, and we try to give them like a really good, strong return from that. So yeah, we started a fund, and the same people where we added value to tons of value to over the past years, they always said, if you ever want to do something, let me know and I'll invest in your properties or whatever it is. So that's kind of how it was. My role in it has been fundraising.
Okay.
It's been fundraising, and I somehow became the social media guy who kind of pumps out materials out there. There's a lot of crossover too, where you're doing like deal analysis. We have meetings once a week. We all have different roles that we have. One person does really good with operations. One person does really good with deal finding. One person does really good with raising money. So everyone kind of has their own role. That's why I'm kind of impressed with what you're doing, man. You have all the hats, and that takes a lot of energy, a lot of energy. So
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of me, my downside is I'm like just so skeptical. Pharmacists, we're skeptical by nature. That's
yeah,
self-selecting. If you interact with any pharmacist, we're very skeptical. We're supposed to be, right? Because we're supposed to check things and make sure they're correct. So for
right,
me, I was skeptical of myself. Like, why would people want to give me money, right? Like, I have no track record. But now, obviously, if I bought a 26 unit for $500,000, I tripled the value. Yeah, the next time I want to buy a 100-unit apartment complex in Oklahoma City, oh yeah, people will probably throw money at me, right? If I want to go down that route. But yeah, I had to wear multiple hats. And, I think for me, I do like learning and doing things and making things more efficient. But I do know that that's limiting from scale, right? Like, even though I scaled rapidly, by myself, 90 units, nothing to sneeze at. But yeah, I do have to wear multiple hats. It is a lot of work. I'll be honest. I am kind of burning out. I talk about that a lot, recently. And it's definitely not for the faint of heart. Obviously, if I had like kids and a family, it's probably not possible
yeah,
to do that. But because in this season of life right now that I'm in, I know I can do it. So I would regret not trying. Because if I had a kid, if I had a kid while doing this, I probably would be so disengaged as like, a father or a family figure. Right. So to me, I had to do the risk now. That's what my mentality was. Like, this is the only time I can take this swing. So I swung, right? And I made mistakes and got some bruises, and like it's stressful, right? Like I got so burnt out and so stressed that I had to start a miracle morning routine, like that guru stuff, right? Like you wake up early, meditate, stretch.
Yeah.
I didn't believe any of that, I'll be honest. But I did it, and I was like, oh my God, it worked. I'm like less stressed. Like I was probably depressed and anxious for a good like 3 months, like this past 3 months, I'd say. So it's a lot of work, a lot of stress, and like I said, I felt probably the poorest I've ever felt, like most recently, like doing it, like versus me like 4 years ago. I was just sitting there, no expense, making all this money for my job. Like I was bored. Now I'm just like, I crave that boredom, because it's constantly things being thrown at. So no, that's what's definitely the pros of a team. But obviously there's cons too, right? Like I call them the 4Ds, right? Disagreement that can break a partnership, divorce. Partner can get divorced. There's death and there's disability, right? So we see that on a daily basis, and just something you have to take into factor, right? You can obviously scale more of a team, but you're gonna have some other kinks that you either work with solo. You wear all the hats, but you can't scale as fast. So it's just kind of like pick what makes sense in your current season of life. Like maybe I'll be a person who wants to partner with people later, right? Once I leave my W-2 job. But I think just right now, it just doesn't make sense for me in this current season. So, but yes, I do A through Z, unfortunately. Renovation, property manager, find the deal, negotiate the deal. I did all off-market deals using direct mail. So I never use a broker, because brokers bring you terrible deals. Yeah, brokers bring you. I've never had a broker bring me a good deal. So, that's just kind of my experience. But anyways, I know we're kind of running up on time here. I want to be kind of cognizant of your time, but any kind of last, parting thoughts that you had?
No, just get a hold of me if you guys ever want to talk about real estate in general, right? I'm active on Instagram at The Real Alex Sabio, or if you're a healthcare professional, join my Facebook group. I give free tips every single day on how to, run and operate your short-term rental business. It's called Healthcare Professionals Investing in Real Estate. It's a pretty cool group, and we do like monthly meetings, different real estate topics. Sometimes regarding taxes, sometimes I bring realtors on there. Sometimes it's just me and my other partner who does multifamily, who's Savannah, I think you've had on. So, we'll have just different topics.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'd be happy to share a link down below to whatever you want, and would love to give out to your community. If you think I'm a good fit for whatever that is, happy to come on and present or teach
Yeah.
whatever
Yep.
during your monthly webinars. So, all right, Alex, no, really appreciate your time. I think we touched the tip of the iceberg, to be honest. So, would love to bring you back if time permits.
Yeah.
To kind of share more. I just love talking to other real estate investors, and it kind of inspires me, but also helps teach me as well. And real estate's lonely, right? Like, no, how many people can I tell at work, hey, I own 90 units, when people are just trying to buy their first single family home, right? It's so
Yeah.
unrelatable, and they think
Yeah.
that you're an rich,
Yes.
lack of a better word, right?
Yes.
Like,
The
oh, you're
perception
lazy.
is the perception is weird, and I'm like, what are you talking about? They think I have money. Like they wanted to host a Christmas party, and they said, oh, let's host it at your house. I'm like, no, dude, I got a 4-bedroom home. What are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah. They think you're like this crazy rich guy living in a mansion with a yacht, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, Alex. Yeah, once again, appreciate your time.
Cool. Thanks. Talk to you guys.
Yep.
All right, brother. I'm gonna get going here.
Yeah, man. Thanks.